10 p.m. in Banjul, and this is GRTS News, broadcasting live for viewers in the Gambia and around the world. In the headlines this hour, President Adama Barrow holds series of bilateral and multilateral meetings with officials, foreign leaders and other dignitaries in the United States. Chairperson of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly presents its consolidated report before deputies. The Permanent Secretary, Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, highlighted efforts of his ministry to release the Grade 9 examination results as soon as possible amid the start of a new academic year. In sports, Gold Post FC crowned champions of the Sam Memorial Football Tournament in the North Bank settlement of Badibu, Salikenya. Away from home, Italy takes a sharp turn to the right after Giorgia Meloni's Eurosceptic populist party swept to victory in the general elections. And thousands of Russians flee their home country to evade the Kremlin's military call-up of representatives for the war in Ukraine. Well, details of these and much more coming ahead in this edition of the news. I am Aisha Tukate, and thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. We begin this bulletin with the presidency on the fringes of the UN General Assembly. The President, His Excellency Adama Barrow, held a number of bilateral and multilateral meetings with officials, foreign leaders and other dignitaries in the United States. Modu Jala reports on these engagements.
President, His Excellency Adama Barrow had a bilateral meeting with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres at UN headquarters. The meeting comes as the President wraps up his visit to New York, where he attended the 77th United Nations General Assembly. The President commended the UN for its continued support to the Gambia during its difficult transition period to democracy. President Barrow updated Secretary General Guterres on the latest socio-political developments back home, whilst reaffirming his commitment to see the process through. Earlier, the Gambian leader met his Nigerian counterpart, Muhammadu Buhari, at an economic forum held at Nigeria House. The two leaders discussed the situation in the sub-region, with President Barrow praising Buhari's commitment to democracy and good governance. He also commended President Buhari for his address to the UNGA, where he is doing so for the last time. The President also joined his West African counterparts for an extraordinary summit of ECOWAS held in New York. The situation in Mali, Guinea and Burkina Faso dominated the agenda, with the leaders urging the military rulers to continue on the transition to democracy as stipulated by several ECOWAS communiques issued in previous summits. Meanwhile, the President also had a bilateral meeting with the Emirati Minister of State, Sheikh Saud bin Nahyan bin Mubarak, at his hotel. During the meeting, the two sides pledged to further strengthen the existing relations between the Gambia and the United Arab Emirates. Finally, President Barrow also received an audience former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who heads the institute under his name. The meeting accorded the President and the Blairs the opportunity to review the work of the Institute in the Gambia, where it supports government in reforms, digitalization, and in governance. The President thanked the Tony Blair Institute for its support since 2017 and pledged to work with the Blairs to build on these successes. Modu Jallow, JRTS.
To legislative matters now, as the third ordinary session of the National Assembly in the 2022 legislative year continues. The chairperson of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee has on Monday presented the consolidated report of FPAC before parliamentarians. Janke Ture was at the National Assembly chambers in Banjul following proceedings, and this is our report.
The most important report has been presented before parliamentarians by the FPAC committee. The Finance and Public Account Committee has reported on the state of affairs of the accounts and performance of the institutions under its purview for consideration and adoption by the plenary. The aim of the scrutiny is to ensure accountability, transparency, and probity in public agencies for efficient service delivery.
In compliance with Section 102 and 109 of the 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, the Finance and Public Accounts Committee, FPAC, had the following engagements. One, that is to review consideration of Auditor General's report on the accounts of government of the Gambia covering the periods 2016 to 2018. A review and consideration of the activity reports, financial statements of external auditors, management letters, and compliance report of the Gambia Public Procurement Authority.
The report being presented by the chairperson of the FPAC committee, Honorable Alajimbo, details on the committee's findings and observations, as well as recommendations of financial dealings on key institutions, including the Central Bank of the Gambia, Financial Intelligence Units, amongst others.
FPAC is concerned about the persistent adverse audit opinion over the years because of the materiality of the misstatements involved, especially when no plausible explanation have been advanced by the Accountant General or efforts made to reverse such unfavorable trend.
Among the recommendations made by the committee is that Accountant General's Department must hire chartered accountants across all ministries to ensure that proper accounting procedures are followed. The central bank must not remain attached to or continuously supervise institutions it has rescued from financial difficulty. The committee also recommends that the FIU be detached from Central Bank of the Gambia to guarantee its financial autonomy, and that the FIU should be adequately budgeted for and not dependent on subventions from government institutions.
The Public Finance Act must be amended to force ministries to disclose these grants. B. Evidence of payment of loans granted to the various state-owned enterprises must be provided by the state-owned enterprises since government is the guarantor. C. FPAC recommends that the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs does whatever it takes to judicially use its funds instead of relying on budget support which might not be forthcoming or have strings attached to them.
The presentation followed by a debate with members giving contributions and recommendations regarding the report, whilst commending the committee for a well-constructed report.
This institution of the Financial Intelligence Unit is a very important. I think almost all the institutions are important institutions that are key players in our economies. So I think they need to be given the required capacity to operate fully,
to help the institution actually to improve. And I think we should now try and then change our reporting format so that when we have our recommendation, they are accompanied with a strong resolution for implementation.
The problem of tax collection. There are instances that you pay and then you are not given a receipt. How is this country going to move?
The findings of the report is in compliance with Section 102 and 109 of the 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia. Sittings continued. Junket Ture, GRTS News.
Now, a new academic season starts in earnest, but parents are still worried over the delay in the release of the Grade 9 examination results. In an interview with GRTS, the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Louis Moses Mendy, highlighted progresses thus far and efforts being driven to expedite the release of the Grade 9 exam results as soon as possible. Here's an excerpt.
The Grade 9s started to the exams late July. And the reason for that was to be able to give time to the affected schools in the Fonyi during the crisis. Some students were displaced, and as a result, we needed to give them time to recover and also give them a fair environment to be able to sit to the exams amongst their other colleagues in the other regions of the country. So having started the exams in July, according to plan, the results were expected to be released in September, last week of September. And I am happy to inform the general public that as we talk, the result files has been sent to the ministry by WEC, and they are being analyzed as we are speaking now. And hopefully by Thursday, we'll hold a press conference to share the results with the general public as we have been doing. So I want to re-echo again, the results are within the time frame that they should be released. It's not that they are delayed, no. The exams were conducted late to accommodate other students that were displaced due to some troubles in the West Coast, particularly the Fonyi region. So we are within course, and once these results are released to the students, as in fact schools have already gotten their results as we talk, so students would be expected to start picking their results from the schools either today, tomorrow, or during the course of the week. That has, the analysis being done here has nothing to do with the picking of the results at the various schools. And it's our hope and plan that the admissions, once a cutoff mark is determined by government, the admissions into the grade 10s will begin early next week.
Basic and Secondary Education Permanent Secretary Louis Moses Mendy speaking to GRTS Aminata Isanyang about the delay in the release of grade 9 results. We stay in with education matters as Shine Light in Girls Education, a charity organization based in Germany, presented educational supplies to its sponsored girls at a ceremony held in Brikama, West Coast region. Vital education supplies presented to 67 needy girls include uniform sets among other essential items necessary for education. Yusufa Bojang tells us more.
Vital educational supplies presented to 67 needy girls include 2 uniform sets, school bags, pairs of shoes, exercise books, textbooks, set boxes, pencils, pens, calculators, and dictionaries, covering a list of essentials necessary for education. This package comes along with full endorsements of study fees and academic lunch money to cover the entire year for each girl child sponsored year. Speaking at the presentation ceremony, Slice Gambia country president Ibrahim Jais Fadera said the gesture is in line with his organization's primary responsibility to not only promote but crucially encourage girls' enrollment and retention in schools. Fadera said beneficiaries were selected after a feasibility study conducted by Slice's recruitment team in both rural and urban Gambia, adding that 5 girls in KMC, 34 girls in West Coast region, and 19 girls in Lower River region were selected alongside 8 from Central River region, covering different schools and grades.
These initiatives, it's aimed and facilitate the school's girls, especially the most marginalized girls. Recently, we changed our mode of sponsoring. We are looking into more of marginalized families, that is from single mothers, because we believe that whenever there is divorce, girl child always suffered. That is why we are doing our utmost best by making sure anytime there is divorce, before the girl will suffer, we will intervene to make sure the girls achieve his dreams.
The education advocate commended the organization German-based President Isabel Kaifer for her outstanding work on behalf of women and girls in the Gambia. On behalf of the project advisor, Ansumana Jao called for concerted efforts in the promotion of girls' education while advising beneficiary students and parents to ensure the donated items are put to good use.
We urge you to take this opportunity very seriously and to ensure that the opportunity that is given to you is well taken care of, is jealously guided. As you know, many are choosing from the rest. Many would like to have this opportunity, but they are not given. So the few that are choosing to be given this opportunity, we urge you that you take great care of it.
Gender activist Mbasi Sanyang said the move will help eradicate the number of girls dropping out of schools, among others, and stressed the need for a fair level playing field for both boys and girls to progress in their education. The organization LRR Regional Coordinator Tijan Fadera thanked their chairman counterpart for supporting school-going children from nursery to upper and senior secondary school level.
Among many achievements registered by Sunlight was the establishment of the microfinance or microcredit for women, which was launched sometimes this year with Soul Sisters Project, and all are geared towards the empowerment of women and rights and empowering girls by Shine Lights in girls' education.
The legal advisor, Noah Kota, advised beneficiaries to avoid drug amid a surge in substance abuse in our society, especially among teenagers. Since its establishment in 2020, The Education Advocacy Group has been helping marginalized girls achieve and explore their potentials to enhance their participation in positive activities to support their growth. Yestro Bojang, GRTS News.
Moving on, campaigns against irregular migration. The Youth Against Irregular Migration recently held another massive sensitization outreach program in the West Coast settlement of Kitty Village on the theme Awareness Raising on the Effects of Irregular Migration. Majan Baro has the details.
Formed by a group of migrant returnees in 2017, the Migration Advocacy Group, Youth Against Irregular Migration, is expanding an active campaign to raise awareness on the dangers of the deadly journey as dozens of youths continue to perish in the Mediterranean Sea. This backway has taken hundreds of lives, with families left in deep sorrow and psychological pain amid the loss of breadwinners. The weekend sensitization in Kitty Village on Sunday began with a football match between YEM officials and Nema United FC, and later with a cinema screening at night. The Vice Chairman of Kitty Sports Committee, Suleiman Jaju, welcomed the delegation.
You people have come at the right time and at the right place, because we are also victims of youth embarkment on this backway, in which some of the youth succeeded in entering in Europe and some of them failed to come back, and we have some death casualties in the mix.
The Secretary General of YEM, Mustafa Salah, said his organization is committed to empower and boost the moral and confidence of youth to believe in themselves that they can succeed and make it in the Gambia. Mr. Salah described football as a good weapon to motivate youths to stay by providing standard sporting facilities.
It can only be a success when the alternatives are provided, because what we are doing is just to raise awareness, to inform them, to make them aware of what could happen if they embark on this journey, both on the journey and the families back home. So if we are able to inform them, then what they should grab on to stay here is something which can be done by the government, which can be done by the organization, the international organization, as well as the communities or the family members.
Natives of Kitty Village, including Lamin Jite, Fatou Sanyang and Sadio Kamara, all described the initiative by YEM as a learning opportunity for them by seeing what thousands of Gambian youth went through, including enslavement, hunger, killing, amongst others.
It's a wonderful project. It is beneficial for us also, and we are very grateful.
Let's leave this bad way. We are really damaging our lives. We are losing our sisters, losing our brothers. Some are dying that we even see their corpse still now. Their parents are really suffering.
YEM officials later present a new football and set of jerseys to Nema United of Kitty. Youth Against Irregular Migration is touring the entire country, sensitizing people on the dangers of irregular migration in a bid to discourage the process and protect returnees from stigma. Majan Baro for GRTS News.
A 70-year-old Ghanaian man who has been residing in the Gambia for over 40 years has now been offered a permanent residence at the home for the elderly in Bakote. As we hear in this report by Khadijatu Jallow, Esa Adakwa was said to be one of the victims of July 29 floods that destroyed many homes in the country.
Esa Adakwa is among the flood victims at the capital's Tobacco Road in Banjul. Like scores of families affected by the floods, Mr. Adakwa was severely affected by the disaster as government moves to support victim recovery. The Minister of Women, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Sanyang Kinte, led the delegation to move Mr. Adakwa from Friendship Hostel to the home of elderly at Bakote. Minister Kinte described the intervention as among a range of humanitarian gestures being driven under the leadership of President Barrow.
2 weeks ago, we were at the Friendship Hostel to hand over the money that President Barrow said should be given to the flood victims who have nowhere to go. That money was from himself. It's not from government. We all know that we have a very sympathetic and generous president. He made sure that every family is given $10,000 from his own pocket. And now, all the families have left the friendship hostel to go look for a place where they can start a new life. Mr. Issa Adakwa, who has been in the Gambia for 40 years or even more, he's Ghanaian by nationality, but now he's a Gambian. He's been here for over 40 years, and he told us he has nowhere to go.
The Social Welfare Minister further highlighted how this facility will be convenient, explaining that it is fully refurbished and caregivers are available at all times with effective healthcare services.
Here we are today. We are with Mr. Idakwa at the shelter for the elderly and children in Bakote. He now has his own room. This is going to be his new home. And from now onwards, Mr. Idakwa will be living here. And here we are giving all support, accommodation, which is this house that we all have seen, which has everything that he needs, daily feeding, healthcare services, and we have staff who will be doing his laundry and his ironing. All the necessary support will be given to him as required. And us will be coming here occasionally to be seeing him.
Citing his condition, age, and lack of close relatives, beneficiaries Essa Adakwa expressed appreciation to the government and thanked President Barrow for providing adequate support to flood victims.
Okay, but what President Barrow has done for me, let me pray for him first, because what first? May the Almighty Allah continue to shower his blessing on him. Amen. And all the surroundings. Amen. So that Gambia will move forward.
NDMA Director of Operations Fatou Tal hailed the collaboration between government institutions, NGOs, and President Barrow empowering the disaster management initiatives to support the vulnerable. Khadijatu Jallow, reporting for GRTS News.
Well, we now head to the Central River region where the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy with support from UNIDO are gearing efforts to replace 2,000 incandescent bulbs with LED lights. Our correspondent in the region, Murulamin Sane, reports on the implementations of the GF6 project.
The Ministry of Petroleum and Energy rolls out the implementation of the second component of the Global Environmental Facility Project, moving to replace 2,000 incandescent lights with LED bulbs. The UNIDO-supported project joins a targeted effort to install renewable LED bulbs in government and public buildings to minimize energy consumption.
We are changing the lamps to help government to be conscious in the way it's using electricity and use less electricity. So by doing that, we are also taking part in the global fight against what is called climate change, and the fact that CO2 emissions will be reduced when you reduce your usage of energy, because our power generation in the Gambia is based on oil. So NAWEC is using oil to generate electricity. So if we use less, they will burn less oil.
Here, project implementers visit the Central River region to expand the countrywide transition towards clean energy at Governor's Office and the Janjambure Area Council.
Not only energy efficient lighting, but GF6 is also dealing with clean cook stoves so that we avoid using firewood, which is destroying the forest, and of course climate change too, and at the same time using clean fuels like briquettes and so on.
The campaign also creates awareness on the importance of LED bulbs as a basic requirement to cope effects of climate change.
Bulbs that were here and been replaced were consuming too much energy, and these ones are energy saving bulbs, and they are brighter than even the ones that we remove here, and they are saving us a lot. So if we were consuming 1,000, now we'll be consuming less, let's say 500.
Bansang Hospital also benefited from the vital energy saving venture. This project seeks to effectively reduce pressure on the national grid and cut existing costs on electrical bills. Moudlamin Sane reporting for GRTS News from the Central River region.
We will now go for a short break. Sports News is up next. Do stay. Well, Welcome back. Goalpost FC are crowned champions of the Sam Memorial Football Tournament played in the community of Salikene in the North Bank region. As we hear in this report by Famara Kanye, the tournament is organized to promote youth participation in development and maintaining of peace among communities.
Started with eagerness to score as they all eyed for the trophy. The start of the game witnessed intense pressure from the Goalpost FC, backed by a huge fan base. 10 minutes of play, they scored the first goal of the game. Their early goal made the game even more intense as the Fatikunda FC battled back to level the score. The first half ended in favor of the Goalpost FC. Back on the pitch, both teams looked out for chances. As the struggle went on, Goalpost added another goal. Chances for the Fatikunda FC were utilized to the fullest, but they were all futile. At 15 minutes of play, they scored a penalty, changing the scores to 2-1. The final whistle from the referee marked the jubilation as the supporters of the Goalpost FC stormed the pitch. Yet another final trophy is theirs. Speaking at the event, Lamin Sedikan, governor of the region, thanked both teams for what he described as a wonderful game. He called on the youths of the area to be peace-loving and to continue contributing their quota to national development. Alhaji Yankuba Samate, who spoke on behalf of the Samate Kunda family, main sponsors of the tournament, said their efforts are geared towards promoting local sports as well as providing the enabling environment for youths to showcase their talents through football. Lamin Jai, coach of the Goalpost FC, winners of the final, told GRTS that his boys did well since the start of the season. My boys lost the final, but that doesn't make us a bad team. I think there is more to explore at the end of the day, Jibril Marena, coach of the Fatikunda FC, added. Both teams went home with cash prizes and special awards for some players, but in the end, Goalpost, the Giants of Salikene, went home in celebrations over their trophy. For GRTS Sports, I am Famarakani.
To the internationals now, as Italy took sharp turn to the right after Giorgia Meloni's Eurosceptic Populist Party swept to victory in the general elections. Meloni's Brothers of Italy party, which has neo-fascist roots, won 26% in Sunday's election, according to partial results. France 24 has the rest of that in this report.
Giorgia Meloni's party, Brothers of Italy, has had an enormous leap in support. Their vote share in the last general election was just over 4%. They've now come out on top as the most chosen party in Italy with more than 26% on the latest results that we have. And of course, most of the votes have now been counted here in Italy. So they've leapt from 4% to 26%. The party that came in second place, the centre-left Democratic Party, was also in second place last time, and actually their vote share hasn't really moved. 18% last time, 19% this time. And just behind them, a party that's had a huge loss. That's the Five Star Movement, this movement that emerged within the last few years, saying it was neither left nor right, it was anti-establishment. In 2018, the Five Star Movement won more than 30% of the vote, by far and away the winner. This time around, that has been slashed by more than half. They took just 15% of the vote last night. So you can see there's been absolutely huge movements in where Italian voters have been putting their faith. Huge differences since the last general election in 2018. And actually two parties that I want to mention that are both winners and losers. They're both part of that right-wing coalition that does look set to take over the government. The Lega party of Matteo Salvini and Forza Italia of Silvio Berlusconi. They're winners in the sense that they've joined the right-wing coalition, but both of them saw their vote share about half from the 2018 results. So huge movements, and I think a sign of quite turbulent political times here in Italy. And what voters have been saying to me and my France 24 colleagues, that they just almost don't really know where to turn anymore at this point, and they're trying lots of different options.
Now, thousands of Russians are leaving their country to evade the Kremlin's call of reservists for the war in Ukraine. Ukraine and Russia traded accusations of attacks in civilians in southern Ukraine as Russian-occupied territories hold referendums on joining Russia that Western leaders have dismissed as state attempts to annex more territory. France 24 again.
A line of cars stretching back 20 kilometers from the Russian border. Some sitting in traffic for up to 3 days before finally crossing into neighboring Georgia. In the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, more lines, this time to pick up local SIM cards. These travelers say Russian border guards let them cross in exchange for a €180 bribe. Many of the men here haven't been called up yet in Russia's military draft, but are leaving just to be safe.
It's gone too far. What the government is asking of us, I don't want it. There are two choices. Either be drafted and go to the front, or refuse and go to prison. Of course, not everyone will be drafted, but you don't know if it's going to be you or someone else.
These two Russians also recently arrived in Georgia. One was on a business trip when the mobilization was announced, the other on vacation. Both have decided to stay after speaking with friends back in Russia.
Everyone is wondering how to hide, how to escape the draft, how to go out as little as possible. Not to take the metro, for example, because there are surveillance cameras.
Georgia's recent history has seen it serve as a refuge for dissident Russians. The country suffered its own Russian invasion in 2008 when the Kremlin's forces invaded on behalf of two separatist Georgian provinces. Now, not everyone here is thrilled with the new arrivals. Many feel Russians should be doing more at home to resist the war in Ukraine. On the streets of Tbilisi, new graffiti has appeared urging, in no uncertain terms, the draft dodgers to go back where they came from.
Well, quite a complicated situation there. And over now to the weather report, courtesy of the Central Forecast Office. Well, we apologize for that. Now a look at the main points once again before we take leave of you. President Adama Barrow has held a series of bilateral and multilateral meetings with officials, foreign leaders and other dignitaries in the United States. Chairperson of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly has presented its consolidated report before deputies. The Permanent Secretary, Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, has highlighted efforts by his ministry to release the Grade 9 examination results as soon as possible amid start of a new academic year. In sports, Gold Coast FC have been crowned champions of the Sam Memorial Football Tournament in the North Bank settlement of Badibu Salikenya. Away from home, Italy has taken a sharp turn to the right after Giorgia Meloni's Eurosceptic populist party swept to victory in the general elections, and thousands of Russians have fled their homes, country, to evade the Kremlin's military call-up of reservists for the war in Ukraine. Well, that was all we had time for in today's edition of JRTS News. From me and the entire news team, we want to thank you for the pleasure of your company. Continue watching JRTS. asalaamaaleykum mbokk yi ñoo seetaan ñu ngi leen di nuyu di leen sargal di leen dalalaat beneen yoon ci programme yi ñu ni neen la tey nag mbokk yi beneen bunta bi nga xam ne foofu lañ fas yéene laal bunta la boo xam ne mu ngi yàqal lu bare bi ci suñ biir réew mi mu ngi yàq ci fi nga xam ne moo di liggéeyukaay yi mu ngi yàq ci wàlli diina gi mu ngi yàq ci dëkkandoor yi ba ci biir kër yi sax mu ngi koo yàq loolu moo di lan moo di kàddu muy wax muy loo xam ne nag lu nekk mun na koo defar mun naa yàq ñu ne nag